Hey there, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Upcycled Adulting, where I am here to help you upcycle your real life into your best life. Today's topic is near and dear to my heart, and it is self love. And don't worry, I'm not going to jump way ahead. Today, I want to talk about why we struggle so much with self love. My name is Cassie Feld, and I am the founder, CEO, and head coach here at Upcycled Adulting. And I have to tell you, that I profoundly struggled with self love. And I worked really hard to ensure that my children would not struggle with it, and also watched their challenges and what they experienced as well. And so today, I want to share with you what's going on in this arena. Part of the reason why it was so important to me to first talk about why we struggle with self love is because when I first heard the term self love, I almost literally had a panic attack. Like I was in tears. And part of the reason why is because the realization that I didn't love myself actually made me feel even less worthy of self love. It made me feel broken and different in some way that was huge and that I didn't feel like I could overcome. I felt like clearly something was wrong with me. And there's a million sayings that circulate that really pile on in this arena. Things like, if you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else, which, by the way, is not true. And things like that, that bring a lot of shame to this space. And I think if we deeply and truly understand where the barriers are or where we struggle with self love, we can start pulling those apart and unraveling them and supporting ourselves in creating a space for self love. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet, this would be a great time to do it because I'm going to be doing a little series on self love and discovery and living authentically. And you definitely don't want to miss a single thing in this series. All right. So let's just get started with talking about what is self love. I think when we talk about this, a lot of times people struggle with the concept of unconditional love. We need to love ourselves unconditionally. And when we think about what does unconditional love mean, we tend to get into some very, very black and white thinking, very all or nothing thoughts, which most of us honestly struggle with anyways. So we come to this place where we're like, if I can't love everything about myself, then I don't love myself. If I can't look at myself as the ideal version of me, I can't love myself. And so we postpone self love into the future. When I lose weight, when I get my house in order, when I get out of school, when I land my dream job, when, and we push self love off because we truly believe that if there's anything we're working on, we obviously don't love ourselves. And that could not be further from the truth. In fact, I talk about this a lot when I talk about goals and I talk about mindset related to goals. And I talk about how we don't actually do things for people that we hate. That's just the reality. You're not going to ever get there. You'll never lose the weight or get the house in order or get that dream job if you don't already have some sort of core of self love. And that doesn't mean that you fully love yourself. But if you don't have something in there that says to you, you deserve this, you're worth working on, you're worth the effort, it's not going to happen. And that means that as we push self love further and further into the distance, we never get there. The reality of the situation is that unconditional love doesn't mean thinking that whatever you love is perfect. Does not mean that at all. It couldn't be further from the truth to say that. And if we think about the people in our lives that we love, even let's say not entirely unconditionally, but the people in our lives that we love, our friends, our siblings, our parents. When we think about perhaps you unconditionally love your children, and by the way, not everyone does, that's a topic for a different day. When you think about how you love them, Loving them does not mean that you don't have any idea who they are and you think that they are perfect and that they are never allowed to mess up or let you down or make a mistake. That's an unreasonable expectation in the relationship. You know that you love people in your life, that you also feel like, I wish that this was different, or I wish that they did this differently, right? You can love a person and still see room for growth or room for improvement, or still be annoyed by some of their habits or their tendencies. And you can love yourself and feel that way too. So when we love ourselves, we're not saying we're perfect. We're saying, I love you as you. And I'm willing to put into the work. I'm willing to help you in this growth process. I know who you are and I accept you and I love you. And some of us really struggle to even get to the place of accepting ourselves. So let's talk about what happens and why we're not even able to accept ourselves, let alone love ourselves, so we can actually get into how we can undo some of those things. And I want you to really sit with these ideas and understand which ones are really present and prevalent in your own life. So, the first place that we stray from self love is usually in our family of origin. A lot of times we are, even if we are deeply loved by our family, we feel very much like we need to be fixed. And sometimes we interpret that as rejection. Now, yes, I did just say that you may love your children and want certain behaviors to change or certain actions to change. But sometimes the focus in the household becomes so much about what needs to be changed that there's not really any room left for what's awesome. And we've seen this many, many times in our own lives and other people's lives where it feels like we are being consistently critiqued, consistently shaped, consistently getting negative feedback, and understanding that our brain is much more sensitive to negative feedback. And so we need much more positive to outweigh the negative is really important as a factor here. You may think that you came from a very, very healthy family. You may love your family a lot. They may love you. They may be very nurturing and supportive. But in the busyness of everyday life, a lot of times we really get caught up in molding our children or shaping them or telling them how they should be or where they're missing it. And we don't spend as much time or enough time in the positive because we're worried. We're worried about what will happen if these adjustments don't get made in their lives. And that leads to, why are we worried? We're concerned that society as a whole, their peers, their teachers, or other people will condemn them, will harm them, will damage them by not accepting some of these behaviors. So we feel like we need to cause our kids to conform enough so that the world doesn't crush them, right? And that contributes to where we don't love ourselves. So as we come into our family, we are shaped and molded and oftentimes feel like we are not acceptable as we are. We need to modify. Some of us are far more sensitive to this, and some of us have far more pressure in our families of origin. Then, as we go into the world and we go to school and we are around other people in the world, we have those outside influences as well telling us that we need to change, that we need to be this way or that way, that we shouldn't do this, we shouldn't be that, we shouldn't like this. And that causes us to doubt ourselves and struggle with self love. Now, I'm fully convinced that every person is born with a sense of self love, a sense of self worth, and also a need to feel accepted or to feel connected to other people. See, humans are pack animals. For all of human history, we have needed and relied on other people and community to meet our needs. And because of this, we feel from birth an innate sense of needing others' approval. And when we don't feel like we're measuring up, we feel like something is wrong with us. And this again starts when we are very young, before we even remember it. And the more different we are from what is expected, oftentimes the more we struggle with self acceptance and self love. And the more pressure there is in our environment to conform, the more we struggle as well. So, to simplify this, people who have disabilities, who are neurodivergent, often find that they struggle more, especially in environments where they are being pushed to conform, pushed heavily to conform, where their uniqueness is not appreciated or acknowledged in a positive way. In addition, if you are growing up in a family where you have emotionally immature parents, or potentially, and there are a lot of us, by the way, who have parents who had children so that their children would love them, right, or meet their emotional needs, you may have had a lot more pressure to abandon yourself and to feed them emotionally, right? Because they didn't love themselves. So you had to love them enough and withhold love from yourself. So these things can really impact our ability to connect with ourselves and see ourselves as lovable or acceptable on any level. The next reason why we struggle is actually that external environment. When we get into school, when we're talking about our peer groups, our teachers, and I'm not saying that school is all problematic. I'm saying even if you don't go to school, you're homeschooled, you're exposed to other people outside of your family of origin, and there is a cultural or a sociological expectation for you to be blank, fill in the blank. And again, oftentimes this causes us to abandon ourselves so that we can conform or blend in. And as we get older, we accumulate more and more sources of outside information about who we need to be. And that leads to the next piece. And that is honestly social media, the media, and other expectations that you're bringing into your life. Sometimes it's the things that we're reading, the things that we're engaging in online. I know when I first heard about self love, part of what freaked me out is it pointed out to me, or it felt to me like I was incredibly broken and damaged. That didn't make me love myself more. In fact, that made me feel more hopeless and less lovable, right? So sometimes even the content that we're consuming that is supposed to be helping us to grow or to grow in self-love is actually creating a lot of shame. So when we're doing things like following fitness influencers and cleaning gurus and even people in the personal development world, really being able to check in and say, is this inspiring me? Or is this making me feel more distant and removed from myself? Is this making me feel ashamed? Because bringing shame into our lives is very impactful. Shame is one of the biggest walls between us and self acceptance and self love. So when something's bringing shame into our lives, limiting it is very important. Here's what happens when we get all of these outside influences in there. And then we start to pull away from self love. We start to become very critical of ourselves. What's wrong with me? Why can't I stick to my exercise routine like she can? Why can't I keep my house as clean as them? Why can't I get my parents to show up for me in a loving way? Right. And a lot of times there's interconnection. where we are saying, why can't I get my parents to show up for me in a loving way like that person's parents do? Or like that character in that book has this really warm family and I don't have that. And obviously, I'm unlovable. I'm not a good enough daughter. And so, where we create this intersection, it's super powerful. And what happens is we believe that something is wrong with us. And when we believe that, when we embrace something is wrong with me, I'm not lovable, something about me is not right, and I need to fix it. Okay. We start looking for things we need to fix. We start looking for the evidence of what's wrong with us. And so when we come into the space of thinking about self love, we oftentimes lean into this idea or this belief that we're way behind everyone else. We have a giant list of reasons to not love ourselves. And I know when I came into this space in particular, I had a really big list of reasons. So I'm going to share some of them with you because I think that just understanding this might help you to feel like, oh my gosh, I felt that too. And maybe it'll help you feel a little bit more hopeful and a little bit more inspired. So, in my list of reasons why I shouldn't love myself, my giant pile of bad stuff about me was that I had a parent who told me I was unlovable. I had people most of my life who told me that something was not right about me, right? I'm 99% sure that I'm neurodiverse in some way and undiagnosed. I was frequently rejected by my peers. I am very socially awkward. I have a lot of anxiety. I've struggled with mental health issues. I have a autoimmune condition. I've got a lot of stuff that's wrong with me. I set the same goal for 20 years and could never accomplish it. Never accomplish it. Okay. Um, I was very convinced that I had no self discipline or willpower or motivation. And so something was obviously wrong with me because other people could do it and I couldn't. I had this giant list of things that I had started and quit or was too afraid to start. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. And even the things I could do, I couldn't follow up on. I couldn't finish them. And so I had this long list of things that were wrong with me, things that were problems. You name it. My curly hair was a problem. My body was a problem. The way that I did things was a problem. Me being a night owl was a problem. I had a list. All right. So I spent most of my time overcompensating and being really, really busy and trying to prove that I was enough or that I was worthy so that the people in my life wouldn't leave me. I also spent a lot of time accumulating people who would reinforce that I was a complete screw up because that's what I felt like I deserved. So I could also add to my pile a very long list of people, right? Most of whom, all of whom are incredibly unhealthy, many of whom have serious, serious issues, but a long list of people that I was like, I couldn't save them, I couldn't fix them. They were consistently dissatisfied and telling me I wasn't enough. They hurt me and I deserved to be hurt. So I had this big, huge list. And maybe you have a big list too. I say this and I'm vulnerable about this list because I want you to know that whatever is on your list, okay, whatever that thing is that makes you unlovable, I just want you to know that it's not. It doesn't make you unlovable. What happens in our mind, though, is we look for what we believe. We look for what we believe. And so when we're going through our lives, we create evidence for what we already believe. So, when we start off early in childhood and we believe that we're not lovable, we spend our entire lives creating this giant pile of evidence that we aren't lovable. We spend our entire lives staring at it. We spend our entire lives trying to fix it and telling ourselves that something is wrong with us when that's not true at all. See, if we looked over here at the pile of evidence that we are in fact lovable, we'd see a much bigger list or a much bigger pile. I mean, I'm going to guess like 100 times bigger. We can find the smallest things to not like about ourselves, but we struggle to find the smallest things to like. We struggle to say, I make the best grilled cheese sandwich in the world, and that is something awesome about me, right? I actually am pretty funny. I learn things kind of quick. I am just innately lovable because all people are innately lovable. These unique things, these things that I think are wrong, are the things that actually make me special. They're the things that make me unique. Even my courage to step into the arena of developing self-love is something to love because most people never do. Most people never do. And the reason why I have had so many people in my life who didn't love me or didn't value me or tried to change me or tried to fix me is because I was drawing them to me because I thought something was wrong with me, not because something is wrong with me, not because of that. When we can come to a place where we understand what happened, when we can come to a place where we can give ourselves grace for the fact that we were 3 or 3 months or 8, and that we were harmed by people who were hurting themselves, who were struggling themselves, that they didn't know better. But that just because this happened doesn't mean it's true that we are in fact unlovable. When we can come to a space where we can say, you know what? Yes, I have really struggled with self-love. Man, at this moment in my life, I struggle with even tolerating myself. But it's not because I'm broken. And it's not because there's something wrong with me. And it's not because I don't deserve it. And it's not because I have to change something or fix something about me. It's because of all of this outside pressure. It's because of that outside pressure causing my mind to play tricks on me. Nothing is wrong with me. I did exactly what I was told to do. I did what I thought was the right thing to do. In those moments, I did what I believed was best. I conformed in the way that I thought I had to. It doesn't make me wrong. It makes me human. And I deserve to at least put up with myself. I say that because some of you may have thought I would end that sentence with, I deserve to love myself. And you do deserve to love yourself. But that might be far off. And that might feel too big. And that might be terrifying as a concept. But what if you could just take one step in that direction? Just one little step. Where you were like, I could find a thing that I like about myself. Because if we can just take some of the overwhelm and take some of the shame and take some of the pressure out of this situation, we can free ourselves to start moving in the right direction. But it does not help us develop self-love. Part of why you may be struggling so much with self-love is because it feels so all or nothing. You're in a place of self-loathing, or you're in a place where you are deeply struggling to accept yourself, and you're trying to get all the way to love, right? That's a big step, right? This isn't a little stroll out to your mailbox. Getting all the way to self-love might feel like a marathon. Marathons are only done by taking the first step. So let's just take the first step. The first step here is to recognize that the reason you struggle with self-love isn't because there's something wrong with you. Recognize that the reason you struggle with self-love is because you have very, very good reason, because you had good intention, because you were taught to, because you were indoctrinated with the idea of conformity over self-love, the idea of unworthiness over self-acceptance. Giving yourself grace for having survived by leaning into that matters deeply in your self-love journey. Do not forget to subscribe to this channel. I'm going to be digging deep into building self-love as we go forward, into finding yourself and living authentically, and all of those deep internal things that we need to work on so that we can build our best lives. By the way, so that we can even identify what our best life would look like. So I will see you next time. And until then, remember that you may not believe it, but I know for certain that you are absolutely amazing and you deserve to live the life you've been dreaming about. Bye, everyone.